Welcome to my August and September reading wrap up. August and September have been my best reading months of the year. Lots of fantasy romance and a couple of fantasy and random books sprinkled throughout. We have some 5-star reads, a new favorite series, and I am just so excited to talk about all of these books. I will just be giving my overall thoughts and the general vibe of each book. I hate knowing too much about a book before I read it, so I don't want to give too much away, so that if you want to read any of these books, you can go in blind and have the best reading experience possible, because it's no fun if you know half the plot before you even read the book. Anyways, let's just get straight into it. We are going to start off with my one and only DNF from these past 2 months, so we can just get it out of the way. And that was Fear the Flames by Olivia Rose Darling. This was actually one of my most anticipated releases for 2024. I was so disappointed by this book. I got about 150 pages in and I was like, I can't do it. I just could not care about any of the characters in this book, didn't care what was going on. I just found it kind of boring. In this book, the main character makes an alliance with this commander, and they plan a heist to free her dragons from captivity. And you would think that would be a really fast-paced, exciting plot line. But in the first 150 pages I read, that plot was nowhere to be found. They were just running around and talking and having a good time. It was just so slow and boring, and I could just not get myself to care in the slightest. And I also just was not a fan of the writing style. It just did not connect with me. I think this could be good for the right person if you like found family and just interacting with characters and having a good time. I think this could be for you, but if you like an action, fast-paced, high-stakes fantasy romance book, I wouldn't recommend this. On the bright side though, it does have a very pretty map. And now for the books I actually did finish. I first read The Serpent and the Wings of Night and The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King by Carissa Broadbent. These are the first 2 books in the Crowns of Nyaxia series. I really enjoyed both of these. I'd give both of them 4 to 4.5 stars. I enjoy Carissa Broadbent's writing a lot. It's very easy to connect to, it's easy to read, it's engaging. I feel like Carissa Broadbent's books are the perfect introduction to fantasy romance. Her books have a good amount of both romance and plot, and the characters are well fleshed out, so I feel like it's the perfect middle ground to see what you like. But when you read these, you can really tell okay, maybe I like a little more fantasy than romance, or you're I actually want more romance, and so you can kind of pick what books to go from here. I know these books have been talked about a ton on Book Talk and Booktube, so I won't go into what they're about too much. But as you guys know, this is a vampire fantasy romance book. A lot of people said that the second book was not as good as the first, but honestly, I would say they're about equal. I really enjoyed both of them. Usually I have a clear winner as to which book in a series I like the best. But with this one, I think they're both really good. So if you like the first one, I think you will like the second one as well. And these are really fast, easy reads. I finished one book in a couple days, which I'm not a very fast reader, so finishing books in 2 to 3 days is very quick for me. And the third book in this series does come out in November, and that will actually be focusing on a different character. So I will be picking that up and seeing how I feel about that, but I'm very excited. So if you're new to fantasy romance, or you don't really know what you like, I would honestly pick these up and give them a try. I know they're raved about so much on Booktube and Book Talk, but honestly, I do think they are worth the hype. Next up, we have a thriller, Creep by Jennifer Hillier. First of all, I hate the size of this book. I ordered it online not knowing it was going to be the mass market paperback size. And I can't stand this size book. I like a big book, but I did not like this book. I gave it 2 stars. This came out in 2011, so I feel like maybe it was good at the time it was released, but this is the most basic, stereotypical psychological thriller you can think of. I'm pretty sure there's 15 Lifetime movies with this exact same concept. Basically, this psychologist professor has an affair with one of her students, and then she's like, you know what? This can't happen anymore. And he's like, what do you mean? You can't just stop talking to me, blah, blah, blah. And then he's crazy. And you can pretty much guess what happens from there. I was able to guess every twist that happened in this book. So it's just nothing to write home about. I didn't love it. 2 stars, would not recommend. This is actually my second book I've read by Jennifer Hillier. I've also read Jar of Hearts, which I also did not enjoy. It has my #1 hated trope in thriller books of all time. And so I just don't think this author is for me. And so I would not recommend. Back to our fantasy romance. Since I loved The Serpent and the Wings of Night so much, I ended up picking up Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. First of all, there's something about this cover that I love. I used to hate characters on covers, but I don't know. This has made me like it. Anyways, I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. I think I will pick up any book that Carissa Broadbent writes at this point. I will say Daughter of No Worlds is definitely more plot heavy. There is less spice than in The Serpent and the Wings of Night, but Max, the male main character, is the best book boyfriend I have ever read. Just supportive, he is loving, he's not crazy. He's just the most wholesome book boyfriend I've ever read. This is a trilogy. I've only read this first book so far, but I did pick up the next 2 books in the series because I love this book so much. I was like, I need the last 2 books immediately. And so I'm really excited to continue with this series. If you enjoyed The Serpent and the Wings of Night, or you just like Carissa Broadbent's writing in general, I would really recommend this book. Next up, we have a classic fantasy, Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This is the first book in the Farseer trilogy and the first book in the realm of the Elderlings. I was scared to start this series because it is so hyped up and well loved. I was afraid I would not like it. This is easily the most immersive book I've ever read in my entire life. I could picture this entire book in my head like a movie. I felt like I was there in the room watching this story unfold. I didn't give it 5 stars. I gave it 4.25 stars just because it is a little bit slower of a book. And personally, I love a fast, high stakes book, and this is a bit slower, but I have heard that it picks up a little bit more in later books. And you're just following this main character, Fitz, and it's a coming of age story, and you're really just along for the journey. A lot of people say this book and this series is really dark and kind of heavy because a lot of bad stuff happens to this main character, which is true, but it also does kind of read cozy. Like, I feel like this is a very good winter book. But I love this book. If you love a good immersive book, or you've been wanting to get into Robin Hobb, I say just take that leap of faith and give it a try. I don't think you'll regret it. It is time to talk about my new favorite fantasy romance series, the Kindreds Curse saga by Penn Cole. The first book is Spark of the Everflame, then we have Glow of the Everflame, and then Heat of the Everflame. This is a 4-book series. The 4th book, Burn of the Everflame, is supposed to come out sometime soon, but it keeps getting delayed, and I need that book now. I need to finish this series so bad. I have never loved a fantasy romance series so much. I've never been one to read books from series back to back, but I read all 3 of these books in like 10 days, which these are chunky books and I'm not a fast reader, and so that's insane. I literally could not put these books down. Like, I finished Glow of the Everflame at like 3 in the morning one night. I finished it in 2 sittings because I could not stop reading it. This is a very plot heavy fantasy romance series, which, if you can't tell by now, is what I love. This is the best slow burn romance I've ever read. I feel like so many people will call a book slow burn, but then the couple is already together like 70% of the way through the book. But not this series. This is like a more than 1 book slow burn. This is kind of like a twist on the typical fantasy romance of there's the mortals, humans, and then there's like the descended from gods, super powerful people. And that's all I'm gonna tell you because I want you to go in blind and have the best time with these books like I did. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I loved every second of it. Please know that the first book is definitely the weakest in the series. If you even remotely enjoyed the first book, I think you will love the second and the third. Spark of the Everflame, I would say, is probably like a 3.5 star book, but Glow of the Everflame and Heat of the Everflame are both 5-star books for me. These were absolute perfection. If I had to pick an absolute favorite between these 2, I'd probably choose Glow of the Everflame. However, I absolutely love both, and Heat of the Everflame was a lot of fun because you do get to see more of the world. I just cannot say enough good things about this series. I felt like a piece of my soul died when I finished these books. I had the biggest book hangover of my life. I can't wait until Burn of the Everflame comes out. I am going to get it on release day. A lot of people say the main character is a bit insufferable because she doesn't make the best choices. Personally, it didn't bother me and I could understand her decisions for most things. But if that bugs you, just go in knowing that and have an open mind, and maybe you like it, maybe you don't. But I know I love this series with my entire heart and soul. It's one of those series I wish I could reread for the first time again. Next up, I read Margos Got Money Trouble as a palate cleanser between fantasy romance books because I do not want to burn out on fantasy romance books, so I've been trying to put in palate cleanser books in between series and books so I don't burn out and I can stay in my fantasy romance era for as long as possible. So this book is a literary fiction about Margot, and she's got money trouble. And honestly, I did not really care for this book. I would give it 2.5, maybe 3 stars at the most. Do note that I have yet to find a literary fiction book that I like, so you may enjoy this more than I did. I don't know what it is about literary fiction. I just cannot find one that I enjoy. I think I just went in with the wrong expectations for this book. Basically, Margot has this kid and then she gets fired from her job and she's like, I need to find a way to get money to provide for myself and my baby. And you know, I thought we were gonna go through all these different jobs and trying different ways to earn money and like the ups and downs of life and just trying to find her way. But she ends up starting OnlyFans, which that's fine, that can be fun to read about. But this book entirely focused on OnlyFans and her journey with that and how she made money through OnlyFans. And I just thought it was gonna be about all these different jobs and like ups and downs, and it was just only on that one thing. And I was like, that's kind of boring, and I just could not connect with it. This was very mediocre. I mean, it worked as a palate cleanser in between books, but I wouldn't recommend it. We have another new favorite fantasy romance book, which is Reign of Shadows and Endings, which is the first book in the Legacy series. I've only read the first book so far, but I did order the second book, and then the third book comes out at the very end of October, and I am so excited. I have a feeling this is going to be another all-time favorite fantasy romance series. This was such an easy 5-star book for me. If we're talking just singular books I've read this year, this is easily the best fantasy romance book I've read all year. This book hooked me in right away. I'm one of those people where it takes me at least 50 to 100 pages to really get into pretty much any story in any book. But literally 15 pages into this book, I was like, I need to continue. I need to know what happens. And that never happens. So within 100 pages, I was like, I have a feeling this is going to be 5 stars. And it was. This is a dark fantasy romance book, which honestly, that's all I knew going into it, and I didn't really know what that meant. But yes, this is dark. It is messed up. So please look up trigger warnings, see if it is something you can handle. But if it is up your alley, I think you will love it. I've never been so angry at a book in my entire life. Pretty much every single character in this book I absolutely hate. You know, I don't normally wish death on characters in books, but honestly, if this author decided to kill off almost everyone in this book at the end of the series, I don't think I'd be mad about it. So I absolutely love this book and ate it up. It's over 600 pages, and I finished this in 2, maybe 3 days. I love this book so much, but again, it is not for everyone. So please make sure to look up if it is something you can handle or not, but it is definitely a new favorite for me. Last but not least, we have Fantasma by Kaylee Smith. This is another fantasy romance book that came out in September. And man, I had such a jolly good time with this book. It is so much fun. First of all, this book has a competition setting, which I absolutely love. Competitions, trials, anything of that sort, I'm a sucker for in fantasy romance. I don't know what it is, I just love it so much. In this book, we follow the main character Ophelia, who enters this competition called Fantasma. It is a deadly competition where pretty much everyone who joins it either dies or they forfeit. And there are 9 levels to this competition, all based on a different circle of hell. So you have lust, wrath, envy, all of that. And in this competition, Ophelia meets a phantom. Phantoms are the most powerful type of ghost. And she makes an alliance with this phantom to help her throughout the competition. And yes, as you can guess, the love interest is the ghost, which is so fun, so fun. I've never read a fantasy romance with a ghost as the love interest. This book does have a decent amount of spice, which I've never read this much spice before, but I kind of liked it. I think this would be perfect if you're in a reading slump. It is so fun and it is fast paced. I would give this an easy 4 to 4.5 stars. I loved having a ghost as the love interest. I want more of that. And this is the perfect October book with the ghost and just the spooky setting. This author does have a second book coming out in the Wicked Games series, I believe in March or April of 2025. And so I am 100% going to be picking that up. If it lives up to this, we may have a new favorite fantasy romance author to add to our list. If you need a fantasy romance book for October, read this. And that is all of the books I read in August and September. I'm hoping the rest of the year will be just as good. Comment down below your favorite book you read from August and September. And if you made it this far, leave a little stack of books emoji down in the comments below so that I know who you are. And thank you so much for joining me for this video. I appreciate you. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you all in the next one. I love you. Bye.